Rain tapped steadily against the window, each drop merging with the constant hiss of wind outside. The dim glow of the lamp painted a dull yellow circle on the floor, barely pushing back the shadows that clung to the corners of the room. I sat curled in my blanket, pretending to focus on the book in my hands, though my eyes kept drifting toward the darkness beyond the light. That's when I heard a faint, deliberate sound, the kind that makes you freeze before you even understand why. It was the slow, deliberate drag of fingernails over wood, starting soft, then pausing, then returning with more pressure. At first, I told myself it was nothing more than the old building shifting in the storm, but the sound kept going, scraping in short bursts, pausing, and then scratching again with a measured rhythm, like something working patiently on the other side. The direction of it became clear. It was coming from directly behind my bed. My chest tightened as the realization sank in. It wasn't the random scurry of a rat or mouse. There was intention in it, an almost human persistence, the kind that comes from knowing exactly where to dig. I set the book aside, slowly reaching for the flashlight on the nightstand, my fingers cold even in the warmth of the blanket. The beam cut through the shadows as I stepped closer to the wall. The sound stopped instantly, leaving an unnatural stillness that pressed in on my ears. I stood there, the light trembling slightly in my hand, waiting for something to happen. The silence stretched, thick and unnatural, until I began to step back, my heartbeat thudding in my throat. That's when the scratching started again, sharper now and closer, as if whatever was inside had moved right up to the surface. It started with a slow, irregular drip somewhere above me, faint at first, just enough to draw my attention away from the steady patter of the rain. I tilted my head, listening, and realized it was coming from the ceiling. I grabbed the flashlight again, sweeping the beam upward. And that's when I saw a dark, glistening drop sliding down from a hairline crack in the plaster. At first I thought it was just dirty rainwater seeping in from the storm, but as it fell and splattered onto the floorboards, the color stopped me cold. It wasn't murky brown, it was deep red. My breath caught in my throat. Another drop formed, swelled, and fell, hitting the wood with a heavy plop that seemed too thick for water. The smell hit me next, faint but unmistakable, metallic and sour, like old coins left in damp air. I moved closer, raising the flashlight to the ceiling, and the light caught more of it, dark streaks spreading slowly along the crack as if something above was bleeding through. My mind searched for some rational cause. Rusty pipes, old paint, bleeding butt. The texture, the viscosity, the way it clung before falling told a different story. One of the drops landed on my wrist, warm against my skin, and I jerked back as if burned. The heat of it seemed wrong in the cold of the room. I stared at the spot, at the faint smear it left as it rolled toward my palm. Then came another drop, and another, faster now, as though whatever was above had been stirred awake. The red spread along the ceiling in branching lines, seeping deeper, the crack widening just enough for more of it to gather and swell before dripping down in slow, heavy bursts that landed inches from where I stood. The hole in the wall wasn't big at first, just enough to catch my attention when the beam of my flashlight swept across it. The edges of the plaster were jagged, curling outward like something had pushed from the inside. I crouched down, my breath fogging the air in front of me, and shone the light through. At first, I thought I was looking into another apartment or maybe an empty maintenance space, but the beam revealed something else entirely, a small, hidden room that shouldn't have been there at all. The walls inside were the same faded, water-stained plaster as the rest of the building, but streaked and splattered with something far darker. The stains were black in the dim light, but the thick, uneven way they clung to the surface told me they had once been bright red. They covered the corners, smeared in chaotic arcs and splashes that told of violence, not accident. The floor was worse. The flashlight's beam trembled as it caught the warped boards beneath layers of dried residue, thick in some spots, so dark it looked almost tar-like. There were gaps where the wood had swollen or rotted, and in one of them I could see the tip of something pale too smooth to be stone or plaster. I leaned closer and realized it was bone, not a fragment, but a joint, still faintly connected to something buried deeper beneath the floor. In the far corner sat an old rocking chair, its paint chipped and its seat worn to splinters. It creaked once, the faintest motion, even though the air in the room felt completely still. The floor beneath it was stained the deepest of all, as if it had been placed there deliberately, right over the darkest pool. Then the light caught something on the opposite wall. Long, ragged marks gouged into the plaster, layered over each other, deep enough to expose the wood beneath. They were the size and shape of fingernail scratches, desperate and uneven, starting high and dragging downward in jagged trails. Near the center of the far wall hung a cracked mirror, its frame warped and blackened as though scorched. My light reflected off its surface strangely, bending and distorting. The glass claddy except for one clear spot in the middle. Where the silver backing seemed eaten away from the inside, I moved the flashlight toward the cracked mirror, my breath catching as the reflection came into focus. At first, it was faint, a vague silhouette where my own face should have been. The features blurred as though I were looking through a sheet of water. Then the image sharpened, and I froze. It was me, but not me in my skin. In the reflection looked torn in places, deep gashes running along my jaw and across my forehead, the edges of the wounds glistening as though still wet. My eyes were wrong too, nothing but black hollows that seemed to swallow the light. The figure tilted its head slightly, the way a predator might study prey. My own head hadn't moved, but the thing in the mirror's slow, deliberate motion was perfectly clear. I couldn't look away. It raised its hand, and that's when I saw the knife. The blade was short and rusted, but every inch of it was coated in something dark that dripped slowly from the tip. Hanging from the edge were thin strips of something pale and fibrous, swaying gently with each droplet that slid off. My stomach turned as the metallic temps of blood seemed to thicken in the air, though the room around me remained still. The figure's mouth began to curl upward into a smile and expression that didn't reach the eyes. Those black voids that felt alive in a way that made my chest tighten. As it smiled, I saw that its teeth were the same deep red as the knife, flecks of something fresh lodged between them. The smile widened until it seemed unnatural, the corners of the mouth stretching too far, the skin around it tearing slightly as if to make room. I took a step back without meaning to, and the reflection stepped forward, closing the gap as though the glass between us wasn't really there. My pulse pounded in my ears, but my legs felt heavy, my breath shallow. The hand with the knife began to rise, slow and deliberate, blade catching the dim light and sending a sickly glint across the glass. The smile held, those black eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. And in that unbroken stare, I felt the weight of something that knew me completely. In a way, nothing human ever could. The sound began low, almost like the distant hum of machinery buried deep underground, but it swelled quickly, curling through the air with a vibration that seemed to press against my skull. It wasn't just a noise, it felt like it was inside my head, rattling my thoughts, making my vision flicker at the edges. I gripped the sides of my head, but it only grew sharper, layered with a faint whisper that was impossible to make out, the words slipping just beyond comprehension. The whisper grew clearer, closer, and with it came a sudden drop in the temperature. My breath fogged in front of me, each exhale hanging heavy in the air before vanishing. The shadows along the walls seemed to deepen, stretching in unnatural directions, bending toward me like they were being pulled by something unseen. I turned my head, but every time I looked straight at them, they stilled, only to shift again when my eyes moved away. The whispering became voices multiple now, layered and discordant, speaking in unison and out of sync, like a crowd murmuring in a language I wasn't meant to understand. Then came the smell sweet, at first, like rotting fruit, but underneath it was something far worse. The stench of decay that hit the back of my throat and made my stomach clench. My eyes watered as the sound became almost unbearable, drilling deeper into my skull, vibrating in my teeth. Something moved in the corner of the room, a figure darker than the shadows themselves, shifting forward one slow step at a time. It had no features, no outline beyond a rippling blackness, but with each step, the voices swelled, their overlapping tones merging into one drawn-out word that I could finally understand.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.